After 8 years of Justin Trudeau government, we have a digital divide in Canada. After the auditor reports this morning, we've learned that over 1 million rural households still have no access to high-speed internet, as well as over half of our First Nations across this country still have no access to high-speed internet. This digital divide still exists despite billions of dollars of funding announcements. This is not good. This is not a good report for all our country, especially in rural Canada. Canadians, we all know that today, internet is an essential service. It is not a luxury. And further behind, this inaction by this government has left Canada, rural Canada, further and further behind. Thank you very much. I will now introduce Richard Lehoux.
Bonjour tout le monde, ça fait plaisir d'être avec vous cet après-midi. Je pense que ce qui est important de mentionner à l'ère du numérique, l'Internet, oui, c'est important, mais aussi la téléphonie cellulaire. Et on semble complètement oublier, la vérificatrice générale le confirme ce matin, ce que ça fait 4 ans que moi je suis ici à la Chambre, que je répète de façon régulière, qu'il y a un fossé qui est en train de se creuser entre le rural et l'urbain. Alors, on n'a aucun plan actuellement sur le développement de la téléphonie cellulaire partout au Canada et on est loin d'avoir un échéancier. Alors, je pense qu'on a eu la démonstration de par la vérificatrice générale ce matin d'un manque flagrant de leadership dans ce dossier. Ça fait longtemps qu'on le demande et il faut que ça aboutisse parce que la téléphonie cellulaire est aussi importante que le développement du numérique pour la croissance économique de toutes les régions du Québec et du Canada. Alors, merci.
Thanks everyone for being here. I hope you all had a great weekend. I'm here to comment on report number 4, which is about international development and gender equality. These are very disturbing findings. We hear the government talk all the time about gender when they talk about international development, but the Auditor General's report reveals today that they haven't even been bothered to measure the results of their work. They love talking about it. They're not measuring the outcomes. They're not measuring the results. Some of the key numbers from the report are the Auditor General tried to look at 60 different projects. 10 of them lacked complete data. Only 35 of the 60 even measured the policy indicators, and 24 of the 26 policy indicators didn't actually measure outcomes. 2/3 of the spending commitments were not met. So the government is not tracking the data. They're not keeping complete data, and the government officials who should be consulting this data on a regular basis don't have access to it. This is a government that's clearly not actually serious about delivering on their promises around gender equality. And I watched the minister's press conference and was very struck by how he claimed to agree with the Auditor General's findings and then went on and on as if everything was fine. He said, well, I visited some projects. I traveled, I visited some projects. Well, great, that's not really the point. The point is that the Auditor General, who's tracking the data, has shown and demonstrated that the government is not measuring or tracking results. And the fact that the minister thinks that spending a few days in a project site supplants the important analysis work that the government is supposed to be doing on an objective basis is really, really concerning. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And following up on the report number 4, looking at gender equality when we're looking at foreign aid, very concerning when we know that 2/3 of that money has not been accounted for. We'd asked the government from 2017 to 2023, show us where the money is going. $3.5 billion a year unaccounted for on knowing what the projects are. We need to focus on outcomes, not what we're putting out for spending, but outcomes. What are we getting in response to all of the money that is being spent? This money is being spent poorly and not wisely. Thank you very much.
Do you think there should be a change in the senior management of Global Affairs Canada at this point?
Well, I think there should be a change in government. I mean, that would be a great way to resolve the problem. I mean, it's clear that the government's policy here is to talk a lot about the importance of gender, to make that part of their political discourse here. but they don't care enough to actually measure the results. And I think it's the government, it's the ministers who should be driving these priorities and ensuring that results are being achieved. And clearly, it's not a priority. It's not an area of interest for the government to actually measure the outcomes. The goal of this should be making lives better for women and girls around the world, not to be able to have a jumping off point to talk about something in the House of Commons, but to actually make life better for women and girls around the world. And the government can't be bothered to track the results of what they're doing.
Do you think it's possible to measure that while just showing up for a visit abroad in a project we finance?
No, I think it's crazy that the Minister for International Development thinks that that you should believe that his travel abroad somehow provides sufficient basis for drawing conclusions about the results that are being achieved. This is why we have an Auditor General, to get to the bottom of what is being realized on the ground. And look, the problem is that the government has 26 policy indicators. 24 of them don't actually measure results. They don't actually measure impacts. So we need policy indicators that assess the actual impact on people. Again, that's what this is about. It's about the impact that it's having on women and girls around the world, and the government can't even be bothered to measure that.
What do you make of the minister's response to the fact that this was flagged in an internal audit 2 years ago? Nothing's really changed since then. He said we're working on it. What do you make of that response?
Well, this dissonance in his response is baffling to me. He says on the one hand he accepts the Auditor General's findings, but on the other hand he goes on as if everything's fine. Well, everything's fine. The government is making a big difference. So he claims. He says that this is having positive results. What the Auditor General has found is that we don't actually know what the results of these projects are because we're not measuring them. It's a pure guess what the impact is because the Auditor General has shown that the government isn't measuring the results. So it's totally unacceptable. This minister continues to talk as if everything's fine. Everything is not fine. We need to actually move to assessing the impact this is having on women and girls around the world.
M. Paul-Hus, une petite question du champ gauche sur le budget. Qu'est-ce que le Parti conservateur veut absolument voir, tient absolument à voir demain?
Pour nous, c'est clair que, premièrement, il faut inverser le budget. Il faut ramener un budget qui va viser la rentabilité, mais une économie plus forte, surtout les chèques de paie. Le problème qu'on a, on le dit souvent, Pierre Paul-Hus le dit souvent, ce qu'on veut, c'est que les citoyens, les gens qui travaillent fort aient des chèques de paie qui soient meilleurs. Là, actuellement, ce qu'on fait, c'est qu'on va rajouter des taxes. Peut-être le chèque de paie ne changera pas, mais les dépenses que les gens vont devoir faire vont être taxées davantage. Et donc, encore une fois, ça enlève le pouvoir d'achat des citoyens. Donc, on est vraiment dans une spirale qui est négative pour les citoyens canadiens depuis 8 ans. On voit des budgets qui ont toujours été dans le rouge. Puis, ce qui fait en sorte que les citoyens, en bout de ligne, l'inflation a monté, tout coûte plus cher et l'accessibilité aussi aux maisons. C'est presque impossible pour les jeunes aujourd'hui d'acheter une maison parce que tout a monté. Et on ne donne pas les moyens, l'avantage financier aux Canadiens, aux jeunes, d'avoir plus d'argent dans leur poche pour pouvoir acquérir un jour leur rêve.
Dan, can I ask you about internet and just the response that we got about the unspent money there? They said, it's allocated, we're waiting for the projects to get built, and then we'll put out the funding, but there doesn't seem to be a clear timeline on when these projects...
They're not monitoring that data as well, right? So it's a common theme throughout all these reports. There's no measurement for outcomes. Lots of announcements, lots of show, lots of glitz, but no outcomes on this government. It's pretty historic for this kind of finding, especially when it comes to rural Canada. Like that story, that whole problem about rural Canada is you get left further and further behind on this when you don't connect rural Canadians, especially when it comes to something like their internet. Rural Canadians can rise to the challenge, and including on those half of those First Nations. What else do they have? In this day and age, we know we can connect them as a nation, and yet this government keeps on failing them and not even counting them in the equation. So there's many delays. We couldn't get over, like this part of the report was as well, originally they planned that they would, rapid response was 5 to 13 weeks, start to finish. Well, they're out to 52 weeks on some of these projects. Like the delays cost those projects more money and then ultimately not being developed.
Can we have an English clip on the budget priorities for the Conservative Party, what you're expecting out of the fiscal plan, and whether or not you expect to support it at all?
Thank you. Well, look, the approach has been a disaster, and our leader has been prescient about calling it out in advance, saying that the out-of-control spending was going to lead to inflation. It's led to significant inflation problems. Canadians are struggling with cost of living, and Conservatives have therefore put forward concrete alternatives to help support workers, get homes built, get government spending under control, and we will be looking to see if the government implements that directive. I'm eternally an optimist, but I suspect that the government is going to continue on the path they've been on for a while.
Do you think a so-called grocery rebate will help alleviate the inflationary pressures Canadians are facing right now?
Well, I think if you talk to Canadians, you'll see how costs are going up across the board, how out-of-control spending has driven inflation, and the government is going to try to paper that over with a little thing here, a little thing there, and the money helps, but it's not addressing the core problem, which is out-of-control inflation across the board, across different products, and I think people will be able to see through that.
Okay, thanks. Anyone on transport, transport accessibility? Is anyone speaking to that today? Karen? Karen, can you talk transport?